State lawmakers meet to address the juvenile crime crisis that's gripping the state. We are live in Annapolis. Plus, opening statements begin in the trial for the murder of a city police officer. Live from the courthouse, the testimony from witnesses and evidence the jury will have to consider. Then, a major gang bust.
Indictments and charges into horrifying string of violence.
How top crime fighters took down 6 suspects allegedly tied to more than 80 crimes.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 4.
We come on the air with breaking news. We're following a major backup on I-95 northbound in White Marsh. 3 of the 4 lanes of the northbound side are currently closed due to an accident involving 2 cars. These are some live cameras of this massive backup. We're working to learn more about the vehicles involved. And as you can see, traffic is not even moving. This is in the northbound of I-95, right through the White Marsh area. Again, we will bring you more updates as they become available.
You got to be frank, I'm really disappointed with it.
I feel good with where it's landing, largely.
On tap in Annapolis today, the big juvenile crime bills. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. There's a growing divide among some lawmakers about what should happen next.
Let's go to Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost, who's at the State House for us. Mackenzie, you've been tracking some changes being proposed to some of these bills. What are you learning?
Yeah, Mary Kai, it's been a very busy day. Right now, the bill is moving forward. And remember, this is a bill that is at the top of the priority list for some of the top Democratic leaders here in Annapolis and in the State House. Now, late last week, the version of this bill did come out of a House committee with some amendments. Those amendments were read aloud during the floor session earlier this morning and adopted. However, the full House did not vote on this plan today. We expect that to take place sometime later this week. But taking a closer look at some of the amendments included in the House version of this plan, those changes call for shortening the window the Department of Juvenile Services has to decide whether to bring charges or not against a juvenile. Another change calls for creating more of a paper trail for when officers arrest a juvenile and bring them to the Department of Juvenile Services, regardless of whether charges are actually formalized or not. But where we stand right now is lawmakers are falling on both sides of this, and some are satisfied with where the current bill stands, and others think that there needs to be even more changes made.
And I'd love to have more guardrails around juvenile offenders that offend multiple times, juvenile offenders that commit various crimes. I'm really bugged about the lack of accurate data.
Now, that was Delegate Robin Grammer, and he's part of the committee in the House that has been crafting some of these language and these policy proposals that are now moving forward. On the other side of the hall, we have the Senate, where the Senate committee did, in fact, vote to move forward with their version of the plan earlier this afternoon as well. And late this morning, Senate President Bill Ferguson actually spoke with some reporters before that committee vote took place, and he says he's satisfied with where the current legislation stands.
I think the structure is right. There's going to be the use of SINs instead of juvenile court, the juvenile court system for
the legislature. For our full coverage, go to foxbaltimore.com.
Horrifying string of violence in the Baltimore area.
In this case, 6 arrests to 80 cases.
6 suspects are now linked to at least 80 violent crimes across Baltimore City and Baltimore County.
And today, officials announced hundreds of charges stemming from murders to carjackings and assaults.
The criminal conspiracy allegedly carried out by a pair of 18-year-olds, a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, and 2 juveniles.
Fox 45's Amy Simpson is live with what we're learning. Amy?
Yeah, so today officials calling this group a gang and linking the criminal enterprise to dozens of violent crimes spanning more than a year.
A joint investigation by Baltimore police and ATF takes down a criminal enterprise in Baltimore City.
Horrifying string of violence in the Baltimore area.
Today, Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown announcing 6 suspects from Baltimore, 4 adults and 2 juveniles, indicted on a combined hundreds of counts, after investigators say the so-called gang targeted dozens of victims and businesses in a pattern of violence. The indictment linking them to violence, including 1 murder, 2 attempted murders, 36 carjackings, 8 attempted carjackings, 5 robberies, and 11 commercial burglaries.
4 adults and a youth charged as an adult. An additional youth was too young to be charged as an adult with the co-defendants, so that individual is being handled in juvenile court.
Officials said it was the murder of Delaka Oggins in November 2022 that sparked this months-long investigation. That 38-year-old woman was shot and killed along this stretch of Brookfield Avenue during an attempted carjacking. The AG's office said ballistics from the gun used in the murder was linked to a slew of other violent crimes.
The individuals would target victims who had just parked their cars or walking to and from their homes or getting gas.
According to this 73-page indictment for one of the suspects, investigators say this criminal organization used Facebook and Instagram to communicate with each other. And after robbing victims, would sell off the stolen property on Facebook Marketplace. Though almost all of the 80 violent crimes were committed in Baltimore City, this case is being pursued in Baltimore County.
While we don't go into detail about the tactical or strategic reasons behind why we may bring a case in a particular venue, the enabling statute that we operate in gives us that flexibility to do that.
Investigators not giving details about the exact ages or alleged involvement of the 2 juvenile suspects, though the AG acknowledged this ongoing problem in Maryland.
However, one issue we continue to see as witness in this case is continued youth involvement in crime.
Today, Fox 45 News learning one of the 2 juvenile suspects in this case allegedly linked to a dozen or more of these 80 acts of violence.
And the AG's office said today that several of these suspects have been in custody since October. The first of these criminal trials now scheduled to begin in April. Reporting live tonight, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Amy, thank you. Well, during the announcement today, Attorney General Brown stood with the mayor, the police commissioner, and ATF leaders. The Attorney General saying the indictments wouldn't have happened without all of them being partners.
And I think about all the cases that my office has the privilege of doing, investigating and prosecuting. I think I speak on behalf of the state's attorney and the U.S. attorney. We know that we couldn't do this work without the gallant, committed, dedicated work of the men and women in uniform.
Attorney General Brown mentioning the state's attorney Ivan Bates and U.S. Attorney Eric Barron. Both of them have pointed out their partnership with each other and law enforcement as central to their efforts to get criminals off the streets. Well, this graph is showing that homicide trends from January of 2020 to October of 2023. It shows the first 2 summers of the Scott administration saw a spike in murders. I think it's right there. Eric Barron announced his Al Capone style of prosecution in August of 2022. Ivan Bates was sworn in months later in January of 2023. We saw drops in murders after each of those events, and the summer of 2023 was the first summer in years to see a dip in murders. Last month, Barron told Fox 45 News from 2022 through 2023, if you can follow along, his office prosecuted more Baltimore City defendants than it had in the last 15 years. Ivan Bates told us his office was able to send more cases to the U.S. Attorney's Office last year than ever before. Well, you can find more on the crime-fighting partnership in Baltimore on our website, foxbaltimore.com. It is day 1 of the trial for the murders of Baltimore police officer Kiona Holly and civilian Justin Johnson. Officer Holly and Justin Johnson were killed in separate shootings back on December 16th, 2021. Investigators arrested Elliot Knox and Trayvon Shaw and charged the men with both murders. Knox's trial began today with the jury listening to witness testimony and evidence presented by the state. Alexa Ashwell was in court. She joins us live outside the Baltimore City Courthouse with the very latest on what happened today. Alexa?
Well, Mary, right now the state is continuing to call witnesses. So far, we've heard from about a half a dozen people, the majority members of the Baltimore Police Department, some who personally knew Officer Hawley, as well as the girlfriend of the other victim in this case, this trial, Justin Johnson. Evidence presented during testimony included body-worn camera footage from the first officers to respond to Officer Hawley's shooting in South Baltimore back on December 16th, 2021. Then Justin Johnson's shooting about 90 minutes later in Southwest Baltimore. Ballistic evidence recovered from both scenes, including shell casings, and the result of a search warrant conducted on a home investigators say defendant Elliot Knox led them to after he was taken into custody. A detective today showing the jury items he says he recovered from that search, including a loaded semi-automatic pistol, 2 loaded magazines, bullets from the magazine, a .40 caliber handgun, and ammunition. The defense questioning this testimony the most, continuing to poke holes in the state's 2-gun, 2-shooter theory that it was Knox and his co-defendant Trayvon Shaw who fatally shot both Hawley and Johnson. In court documents, Knox telling investigators he was present for the murders, but that it was Shaw who pulled the trigger both times, then revealing to police where he says he hid those weapons. The state, when I walked out here, was playing BPD's interview with Knox.
And Alexa, have you spoken to the families of Officer Hawley and Justin Johnson? If so, are they saying anything?
Yes, Mary, today for the first time I met Johnson's family. We spoke off camera. They expressed some frustration with being able to unable to hear in the courtroom and view some of the evidence. That concern was relayed to court officials. We also heard testimony from Johnson's girlfriend, who says Johnson and Shaw, the other man charged with these murders, were good friends, and that Shaw even went to their house after the killing. Knox, of course, the man on trial right now. As for Hawley's family, some very emotional moments in court as they played video from one of the officers' body-worn camera footage when they responded to her shooting. I'll have that for you coming up at 5. For now, reporting live in downtown Baltimore, Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Alexa, thank you. Still ahead right now, a property tax hike has some families unsure if they can afford to keep their homes. The renewed calls for the city to lower its tax rate.
Plus, a child is dead. 2 others are in the hospital after a southeast Baltimore fire. The latest on their conditions and the investigation tonight.
The radar's starting to light up out there. We've got showers across the area as we have a pretty potent storm system forming out to our west. We've got a lot of weather coming our way in the next day and a half. We're going to track it all for you coming up.
Well, Fox 45 News continues to follow investigations into two separate early morning fires. In southeast Baltimore, an 8-year-old has died, 2 others in critical condition after an early morning fire destroyed a row home. According to fire officials, a 13-year-old and 22-year-old were pulled out of the house unconscious. Fox 45's Shannon Lilly was at the scene on Lombard Street and has more information on the investigation and who was involved.
Yeah, we continue to see the impact of this deadly fire. It left nearly 20 people without a home, at least temporarily. Now, we know the Red Cross has been out here working to assist them. And BGE has also been working to cut off the gas line. You can see them here digging into the roadway. We are also getting a closer look at the damage, and it is absolutely devastating. You can see these mangled remains that were once inside the home, even the recycling bin that was outside of the home. I even saw what looked to be a shoe in the pile of rubble, just giving you some perspective of what this fire was like and the destruction that it left behind. Now, this home is where firefighters pulled 3 unconscious people from the home, and now we are hearing from a neighbor who not only is displaced from this fire, but she says she witnessed paramedics performing CPR on one of the victims. Take a listen.
They had a stretcher with one of the small people, and they were pressing their chest. We can rebuild houses, but you can't get lives back, so I'm glad I'm alive, but I know that they're hurting.
Now, following the fire this morning, the fire department held a press conference with Chief Wallace and Councilman Zeke Cohen, who oversees this district. The councilman saying he's devastated by the news.
Look, there is not much worse than showing up and seeing young children that have been victims in a very significant fire. And so for me as a councilman and also as a father, I want to make sure that both the neighbors in the immediate area, but also our first responders have the support that they need.
Because of the nature of the fire, the extent of the injuries, we have a standard way that we investigate things. All options are on the table with this. We have no indication that there was any suspicious activity, but given where we are right now with the degree of injuries, this will be a very slow, methodical investigation, and we will use all the tools at our disposal to make that determination.
And just another sobering look at the damage here as this investigation continues. Chief Wallace says they are still trying to determine what caused this fire, and of course, as soon as we get that information, we'll bring it to you. Reporting in Highlandtown, I'm Shannon Lilly, Fox 45 News.
And we are also following the investigation into a second fire in Harford County. A firefighter is recovering after being injured in a house fire in Havre de Grace. According to officials, he was taken to the burn center at Bayview. Firefighters say the fire was sparked by a space heater in a sunroom, and then that fire spread, causing about $450,000 in damage. It took firefighters, 65 of them, about 45 minutes to get the fire under control. And Fox 45 will continue to monitor both of these ongoing investigations and bring you any new developments on air and online at foxbaltimore.com. Well, taking a live look across Maryland this afternoon, the clouds have rolled in, but it was a beautiful spring-like afternoon with temperatures reaching into the 60s. And we're not the only ones seeing the warmer weather. In the Midwest, it felt like summer today, but it's not going to last long as winter will be right back tomorrow. The plains and Midwest seeing highs in the 60s and 70s today, but temperatures will be soaring to the 80s and 90s in parts of Texas and the southern plains. That happened today, but a sharp drop of 20 to 40 degrees is expected across some states tomorrow. Chicago seeing mid-70s today and wind chills in the teens and single digits tomorrow. But where that warm and cold clash, there could be some severe thunderstorms and heavy rainfall, and that includes here at home. Let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Gerard, I think I just did your full weather forecast for you.
I'm just going to hand this over to you. You got it. You've lived in Chicago quite a bit,
yes.
And you know what they call those 20 to 30 degree drops there? They call it Tuesday. because it happens so often. The weather is so volatile out there, but you know, those storm systems that track across our area can bring some of that activity here. We're getting some of that now. This is just a prelude to what we have coming here. So some scattered showers out there this evening, and we're going to see a whole lot more. Let's talk about all this that's coming. You could see a lot of the country starting to feel a lot of this storm system, but it's still pretty far back to the west. We're going to see it light up across parts of the Midwest here in just the next few hours, while we are just going to be in the cooler side of things, relatively speaking. We will see some rain and thunderstorm activity likely coming our way. We are not anticipating anything severe at all. That's the good news. But as we head through tonight, more scattered showers. It'll be a fairly mild evening, but we're going to start to see the wind coming up too with this system approaching. So get used to seeing some rainfall and cloudy skies. We're going to have a good bit of that with this system for the next day, day and a half. So here's your Wednesday starting out in the morning. More scattered showers, possibly a rumble of thunder. We'll keep that chance around through the middle part of the day. Now, I think tomorrow evening will probably be at our peak of activity, where we will see the most rain and thunderstorms possible, and we'll also see the winds starting to really pick up too. By the time we get into the overnight hours, the wind will still be up, but the rain will start to move down, and by Thursday morning we're going to be waking up to some much chillier air. So we are going to get a punch to the system here of some colder air coming by. Perhaps not quite to the degree that they have a little further west, where they're getting 20, 30 degree temperature drops. But either way, this is pretty chilly stuff. We're talking highs in the 40s. Let's talk about those wind gusts again. We'll see those winds gusting upwards near 30 miles per hour as we move through most of your day Wednesday. Wednesday night into Thursday morning, though, we could be seeing those winds gusting up near 50 miles per hour at times. So anything that's not nailed to the ground, we're talking trash cans, hats, toupees, make sure it is well secured, because it may just blow away through the overnight hours Wednesday night into Thursday. But by Thursday morning, we're going to start to see the winds coming down a bit. And we have, again, those wind advisories in effect. That's where we're going to see gusty winds pretty much across the entire area until then. Again, those temperatures, what a shock. We'll see them drop from the upper 60s on Wednesday to the 40s on Thursday. And we stay above average. So on your 7-day forecast, rainy and windy for your Wednesday, will dry out for Thursday. Weekend chances, there will be some lingering around.
Gerard, thank you. Her property tax bill jumped $4,000, and she's not alone. Talking with a Baltimore resident who says she's not sure if she can afford it. And now you can watch Fox 45 News for free anytime on Amazon Fire TV or Samsung TV Plus. The Maryland Transportation Authority is celebrating the launch of zero-emission buses in the state. 7 new zero-emission buses have been added to the agency's bus fleet. They are part of the pilot program to inform the agency's transition to a zero-emission fleet, helping to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and improving air quality for Maryland residents.
Zero-emission buses mean higher air quality for our region, and they operate quieter than conventional buses, which reduces noise pollution. Today's launch represents our commitment to meeting climate goals and a better future for ourselves and the generations to come.
These 7 buses, they really are just the start. They're an important start of where we are going, and they're an important start for our dedication, our commitment to be able to build out a larger electric fleet in the state of Maryland. And we're starting with these 7 buses because we have to get this moment right.
Governor Moore went on to speak about the importance of addressing climate change. The Climate Solutions Now Act looks to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 60% by 2031 and 100% clean energy by 2035.
Big expectations for Grayson Rodriguez entering his 2nd season in the show. How the O's former first-round draft pick fared here in Sarasota for his first start of spring training.
I'm Kayla Gaskins. Coming up, the issue Americans are most likely to say is the biggest problem facing the United States and how those poll numbers are driving political pivots.
Taking a live look at Camden Yards this afternoon, we are just 30 days away from opening day. The O's will be hosting the LA Angels on March 28th. First pitch, 3:05 in the afternoon. But right now, the O's are well into spring training down in Sarasota.
And fans back here getting their gear ready, getting those shirts clean, those hats brimmed up. Sports Unlimited's Rocco DeSangro joining us live from Florida right now with everything happening in the Grapefruit League. Rocco, how are you?
Guys, I'm doing great. Forgot the sunglasses, so that's a rookie mistake, but it won't happen again. The team's looking great, more importantly, the Orioles, and so is the weather down here in Sarasota. 70 and sunny for first pitch as the O's continued Grapefruit League play against the Detroit Tigers. And you know who is bringing the heat on the mound? That's Grayson Rodriguez, who enters his second MLB season. And we saw just how good Rodriguez can be in year one. He had his flurry of ups and downs, but when he's on, we definitely got a taste of how good Grayson Rodriguez can be for this ball club, especially a starting rotation without Kyle Bradish and John Means at this point in time. Grayson living up to that gas 'em up phrase down here in Sarasota at Ed Smith Stadium as the Orioles took on the Tigers. Beginning the game with a ground out and a strikeout. He's going to like that, so is Brandon Hyde. He was looking really good early on until this. 0-2 count to Zach McKinstry, and McKinstry leaves the yard with a solo shot to opposite field. 1-0 Tigers. Rodriguez would settle in the second, giving up a walk, then following it up with a double play. His day was over after 2 innings. O's offense really got it going in the fifth after a Daniel Johnson single. Jackson Holiday, leading off and playing second today, follows up with one of his own. Tie game here when James McCann comes through with a big 2-run double. That made it 4-2 Birds. The very next batter, one of the O's top prospects, that's Kobe Mayo. RBI double to left, as he continues to have such a great spring for this ball club. As the O's beat the Tigers 5-2 after his outing, Grayson Rodriguez talked about what went wrong on that home run ball to opposite field.
Yeah, we were trying to go up with it, a little bit down in the zone. He was able to, kind of take a 2-strike approach to it, inside out it, down the line. And, it was a homer. I like to think that doesn't happen in Camden, but it's a good thing none of these count.
And you heard Grayson kind of joke about hopefully that doesn't happen at Camden. That's why pitchers love pitching at Camden Yards, because that's where those deep fly balls, they go to die. Pitchers love pitching at Camden Yards with that deep left field wall. As for Rodriguez, I asked him afterwards, what's the difference? What's the biggest takeaway he can take from year one to year two? It's to navigate the bigs a little more. He feels like it's more normal this season as he enters year two of his MLB career. For now, live in Sarasota, Rocco DeSangro for Sports Unlimited.
Rocco, thank you. Well, we want to see how you're preparing for the spring season. Scan that QR code right there on your screen. That will take you to foxbaltimore.com, where you can upload your pictures and your videos. It is all powered by Stackla.
What was running through your mind when you first saw it?
How am I going to afford it?
Well, the first round of post-pandemic property assessments are in, and some Baltimore City residents are in a panic.
That's right. In addition to questions being raised over a key missed mailing deadline, huge assessment hikes have many homeowners bracing for higher tax bills.
Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor shares their concerns and a petition that one group is proposing to kind of help cushion that blow. Rebecca?
Yeah, Kai and Mary, across the state, across the state, property values rose 23% since this last assessment period. It is the largest increase that we've seen in a decade, and it's causing some residents to question whether or not they can afford to stay in their homes. Now, this is especially prevalent here in Baltimore City, where at 2.2%, city residents pay the highest tax rate in the state. It's even double what residents in surrounding counties are paying, including Howard, Anne Arundel, and Baltimore County. Today, I spoke with a first-time home buyer who purchased a row home in Canton just last October. Sayada Jaffrey says she received an initial property assessment in December, which raised her property's value 17%, a significant increase, but about on par with what she budgeted for. However, about a month later, she received a second assessment from the state, raising her property's value 67%, a $190,000 increase in just a 3-year period, despite the last round of renovations completed way back in 2005. She immediately appealed the decision and applied for a tax credit program, which should soften the initial impact. But still, she says, had she been more educated on the pending property assessment and the city's high tax rate, she would have never purchased a home in Baltimore City in the first place.
Absolutely not. I would not have, because I think I don't get the same value for what I would be paying. My friend bought a home in Baltimore County, literally 15 minutes away, and her home is the same value as mine. And she's paying $4,000 in taxes, and I'm paying $8,000 in taxes.
Now, it remains unclear why Jaffrey received 2 property assessments with 2 very different values. Today, I asked the State Department of Assessments and Taxation to clarify, but as of news time tonight, they have not been able to provide an explanation. It comes as the department is also being accused of failing to mail more than 100,000 assessments before last year's deadline. Left unfixed, it could cost local governments $250 million over the next 3 years. Now, coming up in my full story tonight at 5:30, I'll tell you more about a petition to lower Baltimore City's property tax rate and why a local economist says doing so is more crucial than ever before. But for now, reporting live in Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
This is funded by taxpayer dollars, and so therefore, if there's questions about the program, they should be answering it, even if that money is going through a third party.
There's been some troubling events that have been brought up.
Fox 45 is continuing coverage as city council members demand answers about how Safe Streets workers are hired. Those questions have been central to Fox 45's years-long investigation into the Safe Streets program.
Baltimore City Council members say taxpayers deserve to have their questions answered, especially in light of some of the recent criminal activity playing out inside Safe Streets.
Well, they are now pushing for more transparency with an oversight hearing set for next week.
The committee will conduct a legislative oversight hearing on the hiring practices of the Safe Streets program. We've been asking questions for quite some time. There hasn't been a lot of answers.
I expect that at the hearing for Monty to come in and literally lay out or have their partners lay out, again, the hiring process, the vetting process, how are they ensuring that, one, the workers are getting what they need, and two, that the workers are doing and performing the work that's required.
Well, they want Monty to clearly answer those questions from council members. The calls for transparency come amid Fox 45's relentless coverage of criminal activity playing out inside of some Safe Street sites. That includes ties between Safe Streets and the notorious Black Guerrilla family gang. That was revealed in January regarding an investigation. Unsealed court documents link one of the sites to an attempted murder. All of this comes after the FBI raided the Bel Air Edison site in October.
And Safe Streets remains a program with inconclusive effectiveness and transparency concerns, but is still at the center of Mayor Brandon Scott's crime-fighting strategy. We expect to get more answers at the oversight hearing scheduled for next Thursday night, March 7th.
And here's a live look right now in New York City. Gangs in the United States are taking advantage of illegal migration crisis, are causing some politicians to make major political pivots, according to authorities. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins reports.
Venezuelan gangs, increasingly a problem for NYPD. A violent criminal organization called Tren de Aragua recruits illegal migrants who arrived in New York City.
It is a right to live in this city, and you should be not committing crimes in our city.
The problem spurring New York Mayor Eric Adams to make a drastic political pivot.
We need to modify the sanctuary city law that if you commit a felony, a violent act, we should be able to turn you over to ICE and have you deported.
If these changes proposed by Adams had already been in place, ICE could have deported the Venezuelan illegal migrant Jose Antonio Ibarra before he left New York City for Athens, Georgia, where he's charged with the murder of 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley. Ibarra had previously been arrested in New York City for child endangerment, but was released.
Our country let this woman down. Unfortunately, though, as I said, she's not going to be the last. What more do we need as a nation to stop the chaos and lawlessness at our border?
This comes as new Gallup polling records a record high 55% of Americans see illegal immigration as a critical threat.
More unidentified migrants in this country can often mean more crime. We need to know who is here.
The same poll also finding Americans are most likely to say immigration is the most important problem facing the U.S.
President Biden and former President Donald Trump will both visit the border this Thursday as they attempt to show voters they're the one most equipped to address this crisis ahead of November's election. I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting.
That brings us to our national question of the day. What do you think is the most important problem facing the United States? Immigration, government, the economy, and inflation or crime. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com. You can click on the Pulse tab. Coming up after the break, a common fertility treatment is under fire in some states because of anti-abortion laws that push in Congress to protect in vitro fertilization.
U.S. senators investigating why American technology keeps ending up in the hands of the Russian military. I'm Atrel Nashar on Capitol Hill with the American companies that may be behind it.
The rain is going to be increasing as well as the winds as we head into the next 24 hours. We do have wind advisories that will go in effect tomorrow. Could be seeing some pretty gusty winds in addition to all the rainfall. We're going to track everything for you hour by hour coming up.
New tonight, police in Houston, Texas released dramatic video of the moments leading up to a church shooting. And we have a warning, this video is difficult to watch. The surveillance video shows the moments a man walked into Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas, opening fire. The accused shooter, Janice Moreno, is seen pulling up to the entrance on February 11th and walking towards the church with her young son. She then goes inside, pulls out a firearm under her coat, and starts shooting in the lobby.
She got a ball.
Two off-duty officers returned fire, ultimately killing Moreno. Authorities later say no explosives were found. Her 7-year-old son was shot in the head in the exchange of gunfire. He continues to fight for his life. A man in his 50s was also hurt. This week marks 2 years since Russia invaded Ukraine, and the United States and its allies imposed sweeping sanctions meant to undermine Russia's economy and military. Well, they haven't been as punishing as many thought they would be, and now a group of senators wants to know why. National correspondent Dr. El Nashar has the story.
The use of American technology undermining America's foreign policy. Despite export controls and sanctions, American-made semiconductors have been found in Russian weapons systems on a massive scale. The Senate Intelligence Subcommittee on Investigations now looking into how and why, focusing on a handful of the biggest American chip makers, Intel, Texas Instruments, AMD, and Analog Devices.
They're sophisticated multinational companies that have controls over processes, but when you're manufacturing in places like China, it gets pretty difficult.
Their chips potentially getting into Russia through countries not subject to restrictions, like Armenia, Finland, Georgia, Kazakhstan, and Turkey, according to a committee memo. Between January and October of last year, $351 million worth of battlefield goods from Intel were imported by Russia, according to a report by the Kyiv School of Economics. Intel tells us they comply with export regulations and sanctions, and actively and diligently works to track and mitigate potential distributor issues and has zero tolerance for circumvention of its requirements. Subcommittee Chairman Richard Blumenthal tells us they're just starting to have conversations with these companies, as well as sanction enforcement officials at the Commerce and Treasury departments. There's no time to waste in a now 2-year war. Ukraine, without renewed aid from Congress, is losing territory, retreating from the key city of Avdiivka last week. It's been 2 years. Why is this conversation just happening now?
I think that we are just becoming aware of how lethally ineffective our export controls are, how our sanctions are a sieve.
Another concern senators have is that other adversaries, North Korea, Iran, China, are watching how Russia is getting around these sanctions and creating a playbook of their own.
I think they see this as perhaps an easy path to go around export control,
potentially undermining U.S. strategy for years to come. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
All right, good evening. We are watching more thunderstorm and rain shower activity headed our way. I think we're going to start with some rainfalls we have already seen across the area today. Looking from our sky cam, looks like so far we've had just enough to dampen the ground that I can see. Not a whole lot falling at this moment on the radar over Baltimore itself, but we're going to watch as more shower activity begins. So here it is. We're in a little bit of a lull. One shower just briefly just to the north between Baltimore and Towson, but it looks like that first round is starting to at least pass us by. More is going to definitely come our way. And so the overnight hours, as we just move in, say, to the next 12, we will see more of this scattered shower activity, but we are going to see much more likely chances as we head through tomorrow. So here it is. That's the backside of it. And then we see more of it approaching as our system is still way back to the west. It's going to really bring a lot of weather back to the Midwestern states. But for us, mainly just scattered showers and some wind. So let's take you through this hour by hour. So here we are tonight at 10 o'clock. Again, we're going to see more of these showers off and on. Keep the umbrellas handy if you're going to be out and about. You may run into this, of course, even on your commute home this evening. But a lot of this is going to just be sort of off and on until we get to tomorrow. This is Wednesday now. We're starting out at 7 a.m. fairly mild, mid-50s, but scattered showers around, and we could see it a little bit more widespread as the day rolls on, essentially as we move into the evening hours, or especially as we move into the evening hours. Looking at upper 50s to around 60 degrees by then, we may actually reach the mid to upper 60s for highs tomorrow. And some of these could be thunderstorms with all that warm air around. So don't be surprised if you hear more rumbles of thunder. We're starting to transition into a little bit more springtime weather patterns at times, as you've already noticed those temperatures. But we're not done with winter completely. Look at our numbers as we come into Thursday morning. 20s to around 30 degrees. It's going to be chilly, but dry by that point. We're in the 40s for your highs on Thursday. So definitely a roller coaster ride coming down then. All right, those winds, as we talked about, we do have wind advisories in effect. They go in effect mainly from Wednesday evening through Thursday morning. You could see why those winds will be gusting 40, nearly 50 miles per hour at times, but they will come down late Thursday, and we'll start to see things relax a little bit on us. All right, 7-day forecast. Rainy and windy, of course, for your Wednesday. We'll be looking at another chance for some rainfall later into the week. We're talking Friday night, Saturday morning. Our temperatures do a nice recovery, at least 46 to 57. But here we go for early next week. We're going to be back to the 60s in no time at all.
All right, Gerard, thank you. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, opening statements in the trial and the man accused of killing Baltimore police officer. We take you inside the courtroom as Kiana Holly's family demands justice. Efforts from Democrats to protect IVF services in certain states. One senator speaks out on her experience and the importance for resources. Democratic senators are trying to protect access to in vitro fertilization, or IVF, after the Alabama Supreme Court ruled frozen embryos should be protected as people. For Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth, it's personal. She had 2 daughters via IVF. Under Alabama's ruling, her doctor's decision to discard her non-viable embryos with her consent could be considered manslaughter.
So it's a little personal to me when a majority male court suggests that people like me who are not able to have kids without the help of modern medicine should be in jail cells and not taking care of their babies in nurseries.
Duckworth and other Democrats are demanding a vote on their bill to federally protect IVF and other fertility treatments. Republicans have largely stayed silent or come out expressing their support for IVF, including former president and current GOP frontrunner Donald Trump. Some Democrats say the argument against IVF runs counter to the argument against abortion, because many anti-abortion advocates say life begins at the moment of fertilization. Well, coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, another step forward for the state's new juvenile crime plan, why some are growing frustrated with changes to the bill. City and state officials take down a Baltimore crime ring. We take a closer look at dozens of violent crimes they're accused of committing.
The trial begins for one of the men accused of murdering a Baltimore police officer in an ambush-style attack. Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell live from the courthouse.
I'm really bugged about the lack of accurate data.
I think the structure is right.
Lawmakers that are at odds over juvenile crime legislation, the new amendments that are leaving some in Annapolis feeling frustrated.
We are watching rain hitting the area tonight. We're also going to be tracking some stronger winds. We have wind advisories that are going to go into effect tomorrow. Tracking this storm system for you coming up.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 5.
Breaking right now, we continue to follow the major backups on I-95 northbound in White Marsh. We are taking a live look at the backup right now. 3 of 4 lanes on the northbound side are currently closed due to an accident involving 2 cars. We're working to learn more about the vehicles involved. We do see, though, finally cars are starting to move. They're just inching along. Earlier tonight at 4, they weren't moving at all. So there is some progress clearing this accident. We'll bring you more updates as they become available.
It is day 1 of the trial for the murders of Baltimore police officer Kiana Holly and civilian Justin Johnson. Officer Holly and Johnson were killed in separate shootings on the same day in December 16th, 2021. Investigators arrested and charged Elliot Knox and Trayvon Shaw with both murders. Knox is first to go on trial. Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Today, the jury heard opening statements and the first witnesses in the trial took the stand.
Let's go to Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell. She was in court all day and joins us live outside the Baltimore City Courthouse with the latest. Alexa.
Yes, Kai, Mary, today we heard hours of testimony from nearly a dozen witnesses, all called by the state. The most emotional moment for Officer Holly's family when the state played video of other officers trying to save her life.
The ambush came from her left. That was the state's opening line to the jury. Assistant State's Attorney Kirk Bjorklund outlining his case against defendant Elliot Knox in what he described as the December 16th, 2021 executions of Baltimore police officer Kiana Holly and then civilian Justin Johnson. Bjorklund telling the jury Knox's attempts to minimize his role don't matter according to the law. And Knox is guilty of everything he's charged with. In court documents, Knox admits to being present for both murders, but claims it was his co-defendant, Trayvon Shaw, who pulled the trigger both times. Both men were charged with both murders. In opening statements, Knox's attorney argued the evidence will not prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, telling the jury what my client admitted to was accessory after the fact to hiding the weapons. He did not murder Mr. Johnson. He did not murder Officer Holly. The state then moving to witness testimony, first calling several members of the Baltimore Police Department to the stand, including Sergeant Crawford, who worked with Officer Holly and was the first to respond to her scene, Officer Taylor, who responded as a crime scene tech, Sergeant Dickens, who responded to the scene of Justin Johnson's homicide, and Sergeant KV, who took part in the arrest of Knox. During these testimonies, the jury viewed body-worn camera footage, foxtrot video, and images of evidence collected from both scenes, including shell casings. The most emotional testimony coming from Sergeant Crawford, who had been working with Officer Holly that shift. He recalled leaving to get gas in his cruiser and then seeing a call about a vehicle crash. The state played his body-worn camera footage showing the sergeant approach Holly's crashed cruiser and realize she had been shot. Officer Holly's family emotional, tears streaming down their faces, some having to leave the courtroom as the video showed Holly being pulled out of the cruiser. One officer is heard saying, "Keep fighting. Come on, Holly. Come on, girl. Squeeze my hand. That's it." The family, quiet leaving the courthouse yesterday, saying they'll be leaning on their faith in God and the justice system.
It's been challenging. It's been challenging, but we have each other. We are a praying family, and we're finding our way through it. We know that, God doesn't make mistakes, so everything happens for a reason. And we just leave everything up to Him.
I also spoke with the Johnson's family off camera today. They tell me a big question they have is why, a motive behind the killings. Neither the state nor the defense has hinted at a motive. The state is expected to continue calling witnesses to the stand tomorrow, and once complete, it will be the defense's turn. We, of course, will be in court. Reporting live in downtown Baltimore, Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Alexa, thank you. Fox 45 will continue to follow this trial and bring you the very latest from both court and on air and online at foxbaltimore.com.
You got to be frank, I'm really disappointed with it.
I feel good with where it's landing, largely.
Juvenile crime bills are the major topic of debate in Annapolis this week, but there is a growing divide among some lawmakers about what should happen next.
Let's go to Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost, who's live in the State House right now. Mackenzie, you've been tracking some of these changes being proposed. What are you learning so far?
Yeah, Kai and Mary, there are a lot of changes being debated right now, but as it stands, this bill is moving forward. We could see it on the House floor for a vote as early as tomorrow. Senate members of a committee earlier today took a vote on it, sending it forward as well. But as this process plays out, some amendments are being added, and that's where some lawmakers say they're getting even more frustrated than they were when this process started. The printer trying to keep up with some of these changes to the bill language on the House floor Tuesday.
House Bill 814, juvenile law reform.
The big juvenile crime bill top of mind for many lawmakers this session. After coming out of the House committee late last week with some amendments, those changes read on the floor.
Amendment number 6 requires notice by a DJS intake officer of a decision not to file a petition to be provided electronically.
In total, 14 amendments included in the House version of the bill. Some small technical tweaks, others change what crimes kids between 10 and 13 can be charged with. Lawmakers approving the changes.
The ayes have it. Amendments have been adopted.
But ultimately,
Madam Speaker, I'd move to special order this bill to the appropriate time tomorrow.
everyone will have to wait until at least Wednesday before casting a vote.
You got to be frank, I'm really disappointed with it.
Delegate Robin Grammer, who is a member of the House committee helping craft the policy plans moving forward, says he still wants more data about juvenile crime. Right now, the Department of Juvenile Services says juvenile crime statewide is declining, but that's now what we continue to hear from prosecutors and communities dealing with the realities of the crime crisis at home. And Grammer says he tried to require data reporting from each jurisdiction in Maryland, but that effort failed.
I'd love to have more guardrails around juvenile offenders that offend multiple times, juvenile offenders that commit various crimes. I'm really bugged about the lack of accurate data.
Across the hall,
I think the structure is right.
The Senate's version continues to be tweaked too. And the Senate committee Tuesday afternoon.
So we removed motor vehicle theft out of delinquency jurisdiction. The way we handle it is we put it into this mandatory sins petition filing for auto theft.
Expect to see some pushback on that change from lawmakers who have called for tougher penalties for kids who break the law. Senate President Bill Ferguson argues the sins process needs to be utilized more effectively.
Right now, I think there's still a lot of concern about its potential, its lack of use and its kind of lack of impact.
The Senate committee also calling for a paper trail to be created from the time a juvenile is arrested. A report must be filed with DJS. The bill moving out of the committee with amendments, sending it to the floor potentially later this week, where even more changes could be made before a compromise is crafted and the bill moves one step closer to the governor's desk. Now remember that both of these bills in the House and the Senate are evolving. We could see even more changes made throughout this week, even into next week. So we'll be sure to keep an eye on all of this as the General Assembly session continues. We're live in the State House. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. And that brings us to our question of the day. If juvenile crime legislation fails to pass, will that change the way you vote in the upcoming election? 100% of those who voted say yes. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote.
If I can in any way speak up to make sure there's more justice for the victims, then that's what I want to do.
Also in Annapolis today, Pava Laer's mother is speaking with lawmakers as hearings are held on bills named in her daughter's honor. The 26-year-old Baltimore tech executive was brutally murdered in the city last year. Today, lawmakers are reviewing two bills aimed at carrying on her legacy and making sure what happened to her does not happen to others.
And the man accused of killing Laer, Jason Billingsley, is a convicted rapist. Based on the sentence for 2013 conviction, he should have been incarcerated at the time Laer was killed. However, he was able to get out early. Billingsley was denied parole twice while in prison. And despite the denials, he was released because he had earned enough of what's known as diminution credits. Those credits are awarded for good behavior and can be used to reduce the sentence. The Pava Laer Act would bar criminals guilty of first-degree rape and the other violent sex crimes from good behavior credits. Her mother says that policy could save lives.
If we had had this law earlier, perhaps he never would have been able to take my daughter's life. And there are other victims too. So it's about time we change what the law is.
Pava's mother also spoke in a hearing on the Pava Laer Legacy of Innovation Act. If passed, it would establish a new grant program for student entrepreneurs in Baltimore and grants for startups. Her family and lawmakers saying this program would be really the perfect way to honor her memory.
This is an idea that originated from Pava herself, who knew well the impact of early stage grants, as her company, EcoMap, received a similar grant early on when they needed it the most.
Let's make money available. These young students have the ideas, they have the momentum and the energy. One thing they're lacking is the funding. We'll make the grants available so that they can keep their companies going.
Well, Fox 45 will follow those bills, the juvenile justice legislation, and more from this 2024 session as policies make their way through the process. For our full coverage, go to our website, foxbaltimore.com.
New tonight, 2 juveniles are among 6 suspects linked to a criminal enterprise across Baltimore City and Baltimore County. Today, Attorney General Anthony Brown announced hundreds of charges against the group. Fox 45's Amy Simpson live as those 6 people have now been linked to at least 80 violent crimes. Amy?
Yeah, so Mary, officials today called this group a gang and pointed to organized crime impacting dozens of people and businesses spanning more than a year. This was a joint investigation by Baltimore police and the ATF, and it revealed a pattern of violence allegedly carried out by a pair of 18-year-olds, a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, and 2 juveniles. Investigators today linked this criminal enterprise to violence, including 1 murder, 2 attempted murders, 36 carjackings, 8 attempted carjackings, 5 robberies, and 11 commercial burglaries. And though almost all of these, at least 80 violent crimes, were committed here in Baltimore City, this case is being pursued in Baltimore County.
Horrifying string of violence in the Baltimore area.
These individuals have done extensive damage to the city's neighborhoods and communities.
Now, as we often hear, citing state law today, investigators did not give details or really much information at all about those 2 juvenile suspects linked to this criminal enterprise. But today I did learn that one of those juveniles has been tied to at least a dozen or more of those 80 criminal acts. Reporting live tonight, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Hey, Baltimore, Maryland are bracing for our next weather maker that'll bring heavy rain and possible storms to the region. In fact, we're starting to see some of that drizzle come down in Towson and Baltimore, which could impact your evening commute. We know about that big accident up around the White Marsh area that shut down multiple lanes. Those roads are wet, possibly could have had an effect on that accident. Let's check in with Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jaberli to see what comes next. Gerard?
Good evening, Kai. And well, yes, we have a lot of weather coming. We're just getting to the beginnings of things right now. So as you notice, the radar picture looking a little busier. And now we're not just tracking rainfall, we're tracking some wind too. First of all, a quick look at the radar. You'll notice we still have a few showers tracking across. Again, this is the tip of the iceberg. We are also tracking some winds. We're going to be seeing the wind advisories going into effect tomorrow, but we will get gusty winds starting tonight through early tomorrow. We'll be gusting 30 miles per hour, but we could be seeing gusts as high as 50 tomorrow night. So a lot coming our way. We have a whole lot of weather that is going to be going on, but here's your next 6 hours or so. We'll be looking at scattered showers throughout the evening, not getting too chilly either. We're in the mid 50s across much of the area, but we have a big temperature change coming as this system rolls through. We're going to talk more about that in just a bit. We're going to have a closer look at your weekend too. We're going to have some weather to talk about there as well. Guy, Mary.
Gerard, thank you. A child dies in a southeast Baltimore fire. What we're learning about the investigation and the condition of 2 others who were rescued.
Will Michigan be the final stop for Nikki Haley's campaign? The latest from the Republican primaries in a key swing state.
and big expectations for Grayson Rodriguez as he gets set to enter his second season in the show. How the O's former first-round draft pick fared here in Sarasota for his first start of spring training.
Rock. Taking a live look at Camden Yards this afternoon, where in just 30 days, the O's will be hosting the LA Angels for opening day. It'll mark the first time since 2018 that the O's will open the season right here at home. That's the way it should be. But right now, the Orioles are well into spring training down in Sarasota. Sports Unlimited's Rocco DeSangro joining us live from Florida with everything happening down there. Rocco, how's the team looking? You've got eyes on them now.
Yeah, Mary, the team's looking great, and so is the weather. I might not come back, so if I take the next week off or the next month off, you know where I am. I'm on a beach somewhere in Florida. But as for the O's, they did look great in this one. A 5-2 victory over the Detroit Tigers. We'll get to those highlights in a second. But let's talk about the guy who was on the mound. That's Grayson Rodriguez, who is bringing some heat of his own. Rodriguez has such high expectations entering his second season in the show, up here with the Birds and doing his thing in spring with them, with the expectations so high. And he brought it today, and as the kids would say and all of Birdland would say, he definitely gassed them up early on. Let's get to those highlights. Grayson on the mound for his first start of spring training, taking on the Detroit Tigers, beginning the game with a ground out and a strikeout. Looking really good early on until this 0-2 count to Zach McKinstry, and he leaves the yard with a solo shot to opposite field, and that makes it 1-0 Tigers. Rodriguez would settle in the second, giving up a walk, then following it up with a double play. His day was over after 2 innings. It was nice to see him settle in, though. O's offense really got going in the fifth after a Daniel Johnson single. Jackson Holliday, who led off and played second, follows it up with one of his own. Tie game here. And how about this? James McCann coming through with a big 2-run double. That made it 4-2 Birds. The very next batter, one of the team's top prospects. That talented farm system, that's Kobe Mayo. RBI double to left as he continues to stay hot this spring. As the O's beat the Tigers 5-2 after his outing, Grayson Rodriguez talked about what went wrong on that home run ball to opposite field.
Yeah, we were trying to go up with it. A little bit down in the zone. He was able to, kind of take a 2-strike approach to it, inside out it, down the line. And, you know, yeah, as a homer, I like to think that doesn't happen in Camden. But it's a good thing none of these count.
It's why Grayson and other pitchers, even on opposing teams, really like pitching at Camden Yards. That left field wall, it's where those deep fly balls, they absolutely just go to die. I asked Grayson Rodriguez afterwards, after his outing, the biggest difference, his biggest takeaway from year 1 to year 2, it's how he's able to navigate the bigs just a little more. Brandon Hyde talks more on those expectations for Rodriguez. That's coming up tonight on the late edition of Sports Unlimited. For now, live in Sarasota, sunny Sarasota, I might say, Rocco DeSangro for Sports Unlimited.
All right, good evening, everyone. Doesn't look too terrible out there at the moment. We do have some rainfall that continues to just sort of drizzle away, making our roads a little damp. But otherwise, this is not the most difficult commute home you've had. 58 degrees, of course, it's not too chilly either, but we're going to see more rainfall happening. The last report from BWI Airport did show the showers that have just moved through. But at the moment, the radar is not showing a whole lot in the Baltimore area specifically. But as you notice, there's still some scattered rain in and around the area. We're still watching as this storm system is producing a lot of weather out west and also all the way to the East Coast. So we are just getting started with things, and it was quite a system. We were seeing major temperature differences. How about an 80-degree temperature difference between places like Kansas City and Billings, Montana? I mean, wow. Talk about a clash of air masses. That is going to produce quite a storm system for them. We are going to get in the form of some rain showers as we move through tonight, so we're going to continue to watch as rain showers move through the area, and that will be the case again as we move through to your Wednesday as well. Starting out not too chilly either, as we talked about, mid-50s, but we should reach the mid-60s without a problem tomorrow. Upper 60s is not out of the question. So we'll see that air mass bringing more the potential for some rainfall and even thunderstorms as we move through late Wednesday. I think once we get to the late afternoon, early evening, this is where we're going to see the heaviest of stuff. We could see some very gusty winds out of these and the very heavy rainfall for your commute home tomorrow. Keep that in mind. Tomorrow evening is going to be a much busier day than today. And then we will see that finally drying out, chilling way down as temperatures drop to the 20s to the low 30s overnight on Wednesday night into Thursday morning, and then Thursday afternoon we're only in the 40s for highs as everything clears out. All right, so wind advisories will go in effect tomorrow, and that's because of this. You'll see those wind gusts could reach 40 to 50 miles per hour once we tick past the evening hours through the overnight into Wednesday night through Thursday morning. We should at least see some improvements by Thursday afternoon. 7-day forecast. Again, rainy and windy tomorrow. You can count on that, and that'll be the case through Wednesday night as well. Big drop in temperatures. 68 tomorrow, down to 46 for a high on Thursday. We'll see the scattered shower potential through Friday night into Saturday. We'll have to see how Sunday's shaping up. The weather picture that far out's a little hazy right now, but I'm not looking at it being a complete washout weekend.
Gerard, thank you. The Michigan primaries are underway. Why? Nikki Haley says she's not dropping out of the race despite a series of losses. It is primary day in one of the country's most important swing states. Voters in Michigan are making their way to the ballot boxes to pick their presidential nominee. In the Republican primary, Nikki Haley continues to battle President Trump despite all signs pointing to the former president once again becoming the Republican nominee. Haley just suffered a big loss in her home state of South Carolina, where she used to be governor. Following Trump's victory there, she lost support from one of her biggest donors, but she is making good on her promise to continue her campaign, saying she has no plans on giving up.
It's about letting people know, do we want more of the same or do we want something different? More of the same is Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Something different is a new generational leader that puts all the negativity and baggage aside and starts focusing on the solutions of the future. I think you look at any of the early states, yes, he won those, I give him that, but he did not get 40% of the Republican primary vote.
And some are saying they don't agree with Haley and are continuing to back Trump.
I agreed more with what Trump has going on than her. And also, I feel like out of the two of them, Trump has a better chance.
Meantime, in the Democratic primary, President Biden is facing a unique challenge from his own party. Progressive leaders in the state, like Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, are calling on voters to vote uncommitted on their ballots. Tlaib has been leading a charge to protest the president during the primary because of his response to the war in Gaza. Michigan has one of the largest Arab American populations out of any state in the nation, which could contribute to a significant uncommitted vote. Democratic strategists are concerned about the pushback against President Biden.
I think this issue is deep, and I think it's a lot deeper than just progressive advocates or young people or college campuses. I hope the president can get some kind of ceasefire and take this off the front burner, because frankly, its damage politically is pretty substantial.
And while the protest could be a sign of issues for Democrats in the general election, the president is still expected to win the Michigan primary by a large margin. A Baltimore homeowner comes to Fox 45 News after her property tax jumps more than 60%. The struggle some are facing as calls to reduce tax rates grow.
I'm Christine Frizzell with shocking new details about the fentanyl crisis, how it fits into China's larger plan to weaken America.
And now you can watch Fox 45 News for free anytime on Amazon Fire TV or Samsung TV Plus.
What was running through your mind when you first saw it?
How am I going to afford it?
The post-pandemic property assessments are in, and some Baltimore City residents are panicking.
That's right. In addition to questions being raised over a key missed mailing deadline, huge assessment hikes have many homeowners bracing for higher tax bills.
Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor shares their concerns and a petition that one group is proposing to cushion that blow. Rebecca?
Kai and Mary, across Maryland, property values on average have risen about 23% since the last assessment period. It's the largest increase seen in a decade, and it's especially taxing on residents here in Baltimore City who are already facing the highest tax rates in the state.
Sky-high home prices and interest rates combined with low inventory, the 1-2 punch that has many first-time home buyers like Saida Jaffrey.
You've been hearing since COVID, buy now, don't buy now.
Battling to break into a tough housing market.
Hit when the time is right, just do it. If you like a house, just go for it, make the offer.
And that's exactly what she did when rushing into buying her Canton Row home last October for $510,000. The same home selling for just $320,000 4 years prior. A few months later, not one, but 2 state property assessments arriving in the mail, causing confusion.
I know when I was looking at homes, like especially with apps like Zillow and Redfin, you can see the property's taxes on there, and that was a determining factor that I considered when buying.
What she didn't consider, the huge assessment hike that would follow the sale, in turn increasing her property taxes as well.
I was definitely taken aback by it.
Her initial assessment sent out in December raised her home's value 17%. However, a second unexpected assessment arriving about a month later raised her home's value 67%, a $190,000 increase despite no major renovations or improvements being done on the home since 2005.
So based off of the numbers that I saw, it's going to be a few $1,000s once it actually reaches the value that they've assessed.
Causing Jaffrey to question,
how am I going to afford it?
Today, the State Department of Assessments and Taxation unable to explain why Jaffrey received 2 property assessments with 2 very different values, other than claiming something may have changed at the property. Meanwhile,
it's a city that loses around 7,500 to 8,000 people a year already.
Predicting housing prices will stay inflated for the foreseeable future, local economist Anaba Basu warning the city's current exodus could accelerate, especially at a state-high 2.2% tax rate.
More and more people are going to say, I cannot afford to live here anymore, I'm leaving.
Hoping to keep that from happening, Basu helping spearhead a petition to put a question on your November ballot that, if approved, would slowly lower the city's property tax rate to 1.2% by 2031. The petition failed to gather enough signatures to make the ballot in previous years, but Basu says this latest round of soaring property assessments makes the measure more critical than ever before.
We think that will stimulate an economic boom in Baltimore City. Now, a lot of people might say, well, we're going to have to reduce services with those lowered property tax rates. No, because again, the assessed values are rising so quickly, and you will see investors come into the city aggressively and take some of this vacant housing and make it livable.
Well, Jaffrey has appealed that second assessment, and she's applied for state tax credits, which should help make this increase much more affordable for her. And for those of you who are looking to learn more about the petition or sign that petition, you can find a link to it in this story on our website at foxbaltimore.com. Reporting live in Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Rebecca, thank you. Fox 45 is following the investigations in 2 separate early morning fires. In southeast Baltimore, a child is dead and 2 others are in critical condition after an early morning fire destroyed a row home. Fire officials say it happened around 2 on East Lombard Street. A rescue team found 3 people unconscious and unresponsive. They were taken to nearby hospitals. Baltimore City Councilman Zeke Cohen, who oversees that district or represents it, said the victims were 8, 13, and 22. Sadly, the 8-year-old died at the hospital. The other 2 are in critical condition. Fox 45 spoke with one neighbor who says she witnessed paramedics performing CPR.
They had a stretcher with one of the small people, and they were pressing their chest. We can rebuild houses, but you can't get lives back. So I'm glad I'm alive, but I know that they're hurting.
Well, officials say about 20 residents are now displaced. The Red Cross and Monzi's Victim Services team are now working to relocate and provide assistance.
And in Harford County, one firefighter is in the hospital tonight following an early morning house fire. Officials say it happened around 5 a.m. on Hill Court in Havre de Grace. One firefighter was transported to Johns Hopkins Bayview, where their condition tonight is still unclear. Fox 45 will continue to follow this developing story, bring you updates on both on air and online at foxbaltimore.com. Fentanyl overdoses remain the #1 cause of death among U.S. adults ages 18 to 45. But how the drug is made, shipped, and distributed is raising some questions tonight.
National correspondent Christine Frizzell has the story.
Come on, stay with us.
The once shocking scene of Americans young and old collapsed on the streets from fentanyl poisoning has become commonplace in big cities and small towns alike. Despite rhetoric that Mexico or the open border is to blame, there is new alarming evidence that the fentanyl crisis is not accidental, but a deliberate strategy by China.
It basically says, why go toe-to-toe with the United States? Let's just go ahead and do what we can to create social division and chaos to see the decline of the United States.
Peter Schweitzer's brand new book, Blood Money, details China's involvement in every link of the chain of fentanyl, from the creation of the ingredients to the ports they enter into in Mexico. Even the manufacturing in Mexico is all carried out by China, which now also oversees the laundering of money.
The DEA has cited Chinese money laundering as the #1 underwriter of transnational criminal organizations.
While Chinese involvement is no surprise, Schweitzer makes the case it's 100% deliberate, relying on experts as well as leaked documents from the Department of Homeland Security and Chinese military manuals and strategy books, including Unrestricted Warfare, a copy of which was smuggled into the United States and translated into English, and outlines, quote, China's master plan to destroy America. Break this down for me. How does the death of tens of thousands of Americans by fentanyl overdoses diminish power in this country?
This is causing major casualties, and these are younger people. These are people that might go into the military, people that might help grow our economy. It also creates an enormous strain on our healthcare systems, and it is just one of many arrows that they are firing at the United States in an effort to weaken and sap our strength.
Schweitzer says the blame lies at the highest levels of the U.S. government, including with Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, whose family has ties to the Chinese shipping industry, and President Joe Biden, whose son Hunter has done business with CCP-linked companies, with dozens more implicated in what he calls willful blindness. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
Meanwhile, President Joe Biden hosted top congressional leaders at the White House today to talk about aid for Ukraine and a possible solution to the looming government shutdown. Democrats leaving the meeting said the discussion got heated at times, especially when it came to the subject of billions in stalled aid for Ukraine.
It was an intense meeting. It was an honest meeting. And ultimately, it was a productive meeting.
We're making good progress, and we're hopeful we can get this done really quickly. There are a little back and forth on different issues that different people want, but I don't think those are insurmountable.
Republicans maintain Congress must take care of problems here in the U.S. first before worrying about other countries.
When I showed up today, my purpose was to express what I believe is the obvious truth, and that is that we must take care of America's needs first. When you talk about America's needs, you have to talk first about our open border.
Outside of foreign aid, Biden also called on lawmakers to agree on a deal that would prevent a government shutdown. If they don't, some federal agencies and programs will run out of funding at the end of the month.
Many AT&T customers were left without mobile phone service last Thursday because of a widespread outage. Fox 45's Patrice Sanders spoke with an expert about what happens now to make sure an outage like this doesn't happen again.
A massive nationwide outage left AT&T customers scrambling to communicate last week. Service was down for hours, initially without a lot of answers as to why. So what happens now to make sure that doesn't happen again? Rob Weinhold, crisis leadership expert with the Falston Group, says that is where the FBI and FCC investigations come in.
Well, they'll look for the reasons it happened. What happened? What caused it? What are the short and long-term effects?
So they're not still looking for something more nefarious than what AT&T is saying happened?
Well, they may find something along the way because AT&T says, listen, this is self-inflicted, so to speak. But was there negligence? Was there gross negligence? And so they could face some heavy fines based on the outage. And if investigators find something that was more nefarious, then absolutely they'll investigate that. And eventually, as facts unfold, then we'll get to know what those facts are and figure out whether or not AT&T took all the necessary precautions to prevent the outage and adversely impacting people and ultimately public safety.
Overall, though, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, he would give AT&T an 8 for their handling of the outage, saying they resolved it quickly, they were transparent about the problem, and they gave updates as soon as they had them. The downside would be the $5 refund, which really didn't match the scale of what people lost during the outage. Patrice Sanders, Fox 45 News.
All right, make sure your basketballs are pumped up and your high tops laced because the CIAA tournament is taking over Baltimore this week. The free events happening this year that you don't want to miss.
She has had quite a journey to a weight loss of more than 150 pounds. I'm Liz Bonus. We're going to share what worked for her. Might it work for you? It is just ahead.
Getting busy on the weather front. We've got a lot of activity popping up on the radar, as well as your headlines here. We're going to be talking about a lot, tracking the rain and thunderstorms through tonight and tomorrow. The winds are going to really get gusty, and then we have a big temperature drop coming. Going through it all coming up.